Hey y'all, hope you're doing good today. So today I am really tired and I hope that I can convey the message the way I want to. So just letting you know, I don't know, I think that sometimes when the seasons change, it just kind of affects us, you know. And plus I've got a lot of home projects going on. I'm going to try to install my own small internet satellite dish on top of my house, so wish me luck. And I think I'll be okay, and I'll have somebody watching me, but still. So I've got a lot going on, and I've missed being on here with you all, but just know everything is good except for being tired. And I'm just getting things done, you know, but I do miss you all, and I'm hoping to try to figure out how to not be so long-winded, and be able to share videos with you all more frequently that are shorter. So that's just kind of a goal I have in mind, and so maybe I'll be able to figure something out there. But anyway, in today's message we will touch on chapter 5. I did read it, and I'll share a little bit with you now, and then I may come back and share there's an experience that she wrote about in chapter 5, talking about this Mexican lady who was a shaman, or is a shaman. This was back in 1985, and she describes that. And it's kind of cool to read, but it's not really related to the message, so I may pull that later and share that with you all at a later time. But for today we're just going to be kind of touching on some of the concepts, but it's not going to be the main foundation of the message. So the overarching theme today for our message is learning to see the error of our striving for something as a goal when its true nature is a result. Okay, it's kind of like we're skipping a step when we are in our healing and we're learning and growing and we're wanting to put that into action to actually change or transform. It's kind of like we're just looking at the end goal and trying to get there without realizing that it can't be attained by striving. It's not possible. This is my perception, so I hope you enjoy the message. I don't know if you guys like psychological thrillers like I do, but there's a movie, I think it was with Christian Bale, back in the 90s, I believe, called The Machinist. And it was really, it really held my interest. Kind of a dark movie, but it was just very, like I said, psychologically thrilling, like a mystery. And I love that kind of stuff. And it's kind of centered around, if I recall correctly, because it's been many years since I've seen it, but he's sort of got this paranoid type delusion going on in his mind in the movie, where he thinks that somebody is messing with him, you know. From what I'm remembering, if I'm remembering correctly, it's like he goes to work and he's a machinist, which is the name of the movie. There are things that are kind of like moved around or whatever, and he thinks that somebody's screwing with him. And I won't give away the end of the movie, but it highlights kind of that mental illness. And I know that that's a real thing, right? Per some of the definitions in psychology. But the issue that I want to highlight as well in relation to that is that if you are under the thumb of a psychopath, and I don't know where to draw the lines exactly between the psychopathic tract and the track and the sociopathic track, and then there's the narcissistic track. I don't know. But it's essentially a wolf in sheep's clothing who intends harm for you, which is why I like that term, right? Because I'm not a psychologist, I'm just an average person. But when you are under their influence, their manipulation, and even afterwards, sometimes they can, even when you start to wake up, they can still be affecting you. But these people can literally do things, actually truly do things to you to make you feel like you were like the guy in that movie, like you're losing your mind. But and it's very challenging. And the challenge here is, if you try to tell someone about, I mean, it's like a barrage of things you experience with these people, right? And I'll kind of touch on some of the examples here. But it's psychological abuse, and it's also tied in with all the other signs too, which is how you can, you know, kind of start to validate your whole experience as not being you, because they do tick all these other boxes, right? But again, it's always good to get another person's perspective, like sitting down with a licensed therapist and sharing this, and they can, you know, determine, like, is this truly a faulty perception, you know, that you may have that you don't realize you have, or are you truly dealing with some people that are psychopathic, right? So in the chapter that I was talking about in this book here, Fire in the Soul, chapter 5 is next, right? And so it's talking about fear. In fact, I think the title is Fear, Trauma, and Transformation. So in looking up the word fear in the online etymology dictionary, you have the Old English Faeran, F-A-E-R-A-N, and then you have, and that actually meant to terrify, to frighten, which is interesting because it means to do those things, right? To terrify or frighten. Fear is a verb. So, or in the Old English, Faeran, right? That's putting you in a position in relation to that verb to give, to do those things yourself. And then you have, and notice the difference. It's not to be terrified, but to terrify. That's my point, right? Then you have the Old Saxon Faeron, F-A-R-O-N, which means to lie in wait. To lie in wait. Well, that's putting you in a position to receive, not to give something or to do something, right? Which is interesting. And then you have the Old Norse Fera, F-A-E-R-A, meaning to taunt. To taunt. Again, which is a position of doing or giving, okay? So it's like this, you know, the history and looking at, you know, where this word fear came from, the roots. When you're looking at that, you can see that it's kind of wishy-washy. You know, it's like either to do these things or to have them done to you. Which is it? You know, it's kind of back and forth. So, kind of keep that in the back of your mind, because it's going to tie into our message as we move forward. But going back into the topic of that movie I was sharing with you all, The Machinist, and the topic of paranoia, right? Paranoia. If you look at para, the para part of that word, that means beside or beyond. And, you know, I would say during and even after, and sometimes especially after, because you really understand what's going on, right? The intensity, the, you know, of being psychologically abused, right? By a wolf in sheep's clothing. But you might describe yourself as feeling beside yourself. I'm just beside myself, right? Again, para, meaning beside or beyond, okay? It kind of puts you out of the logical mindset. It just shifts you over into disbelief or dismay, right? All right. The blessing here, and sometimes this takes a long time to come to fruition, but good things come to those who wait, right? As the old saying goes. But as you're coming into wisdom and understanding, which is the principal thing, your fear will begin to dissipate, right? It will dissolve, and your knowledge, your understanding will dispel fear. Okay, so you discover and step into, when this happens, I would call a paranormal empowerment, meaning beyond normal, okay? Something numinous, something more, right? Something within the spiritual realm, you might say. So, my question for you is this. Is it possible that, or what if, a big part of our transformation stage and healing is a shift in our perception, okay? Because you can't change your history literally, but you can change it perceptually. And when this happens, you start to realize that the tables may turn, okay? So it's kind of like, it's not because that you've come into this understanding so much as there's a realization that happens both on your part and on this manipulator's part. There's a realization, a becoming real of, having the eyes to see, right, of this other layer of reality that is, in fact, beyond and involved in all of it, okay? I'm reminded of in the Bible when it says we're hidden with Christ, right? So, if I were to expand on this, I would say if you were operating more just logically, worldly, you know, with your intellect, okay, this can be hacked. This can be manipulated, predicted even, okay? The workings of the human mind. But there's a part of you that is untouchable, okay? It's hidden with Christ. So let me pause here, and I want to share just a little bit in chapter 5. And some of it will relate, and I'll probably skip over a lot of it that doesn't. So she opens the chapter by talking about an experience she had in the 80s in New York City with a friend. And they were in Central Park, just outside of Central Park. They were just really involved in conversation. They had their luggage with them and all this stuff. And these young men came up and had their hands in their pockets. And it looked like, you know, with their hand in their pocket, they had a gun. And they, you know, came up to them and tried to rob them, right? And her intuition, she describes how her intuition, you know, kicks in. And it was beyond thought. And it just prompted her to yell out, "Don't worry, it's a finger." And she just jumped up and started screaming and chased, she says, the would-be muggers into Central Park, right? Still hanging on to my suitcase for fear someone else would snatch it. Hoping that somebody, you know, would be able to help and apprehend them, right? She says, in these kind of situations, decisions come from the gut, not the intellect, okay? And so, yes, there's this hint. There's this little spark of numinosity in this experience, right? And then she goes into talking about a section entitled, What Do We Fear? And she says, you know, the common nightmares that children have about being chased and devoured by monsters. Nightmares that occur even in children who have never been exposed to the idea of a monster, right? Are the expression of a primitive fear that has its roots at the dawn of human history when abandoned children were indeed chased and devoured by wild animals. So again, it's this whole, what is it? What is this? That is the parapart, the beyond, right? But yet beside, beyond but yet with us, okay? The parapart of life, what is this? The collective unconscious? Is it the Holy Spirit through the Christian lens? Simply our intuition, our unconscious, some part of us that we don't have conscious access to, right? So, but the point here is there is some kind of numinous element that is beyond our intellect's ability to understand, you know? So then she goes into talking about facing your fears, and, you know, just how awful abuse and trauma is. She mentions, or touches on rather, multiple personality disorder, PTSD, and things like that, symptoms. She references Joseph Campbell in a section called The Journey Through the Belly of the Beast. And again, we have this numinosity that enters the scene. She says, I think she's quoting him in his book, The Power of Myth here. And so it says, in a story of the Jonah type, the hero is swallowed and taken into the abyss, later to be resurrected, a variant of the death and resurrection theme. The conscious personality here has come in touch with a charge of unconscious energy which it is unable to handle, and must now suffer all the trials and revelations of a terrifying night sea journey, while learning how to come to terms with this power of the dark and emerge at last to a new way of life. So this is what happens when we engage with these psychopathic minded people who have bad intentions. We're unaware of it, so we're in the dark, you know, metaphorically, and that touches our life experience, right? But what we're going to learn as we move forward in the message is that we may think that they are unaffected, but that's not true. That's not true. It's kind of hard for me sometimes to read, you know, hard stuff. I try to really monitor. I'm aware of the evil in the world, you know, and it's kind of like, you know, we're told to think on good things, you know, so it's all a balancing act, you know. It's really important to keep that in mind. But she goes into talking about how there was a psychiatrist, Stanislav Grof was one of the researchers selected by the Swiss pharmaceutical company Sandoz to assess the effects of LSD-25 in the 1950s. And she talks about how in their studies with these people in a controlled environment, you know, that they went through these stages of the experience, and the result was very transformative. But she describes the 4 stages, and she relates them to birth, what it must be like for a baby, even though we don't remember that, you know, to be born. It's the same, and they all described it this way, you know. So there's she says stage 1, the cosmic engulfment; stage 2, no exit, and she relates this all to the birthing process. The death rebirth struggle, and then the 4th one, a few pages over, is she calls it gate 4, you know, which is essentially the transformation, right? The birth, or in our case, metaphorically, the rebirth. And so, and she kind of wraps up the chapter by saying, you know, God is not absent, even from the horrible things and our horrible experiences in life, and that's hard to know. It's kind of like, you know, and yet this stuff happens, you know, but God is present still. But she says the divine is present, but the responsibility, right, for choosing good or evil it falls on us. It's the responsibility of humankind, right? So she ends the chapter just kind of speculating, you know, like where does fear come from sometimes when we can't identify it? You know, she says maybe from traumas and unresolved situations that appear to have been carried in our unconscious from other lives. You know, so that's, I enjoy books that make you think, you know, that's good. But I'm going to share just my conclusion on these topics we've been talking about today, okay? Again, when you're thinking about people with evil intentions, okay, what I call wolves in sheep's clothing, they are exploiting the only things they have access to in you. And the only things that they have access to in you are the things, the part of you that is not hidden with Christ, the numinous aspect. That part of you is untouchable, okay? So the part of you that can be affected is your human mind, and they have that too. So they understand how their mind works, and so they can kind of be like, okay, well then let me, you know, come in and work this person's mind, and that's how they can get you, okay? So what happens when they affect you, I would say there's a disconnect that happens, not between you and your mind. I mean, that happens too, but specifically a disconnect between you and your ability to respond to your intuition. Just like her example in the book, where she didn't even think when the would-be muggers came up to them, you know, she just jumped up and ran and started screaming. It was just an instinct, like animals, right? But with us, you know, for a person to just sink down and just in this state of giving up, which I've described as being frozen, sometimes for years, it's kind of like giving up, you know? And when that happens, there's a disconnect between you and that instinctual drive, which is life-saving many times. It's there to preserve your life. And unfortunately, sometimes these people, that's their goal. That's what they're after. Because they might look at you and see dollar signs. Right? So, let me share with you a little bit more about this hidden part of you. Okay? That they can't touch. In Luke chapter 12, you know, it talks about taking no thought for things. Okay? Like his example in here is when you're on the spot, okay? You're on trial or whatever. Take no thought. For the Holy Ghost shall teach you in the same hour what ye ought to say. In other words, this is you becoming a vessel. This is the divine flowing through you to handle the situation. Not you handling the situation, but God handling the situation through you. Right? So when wolves in sheep's clothing witness your ability to handle or dodge all the things that they throw your way, they are the ones that are dismayed. Because it's proof of the divine. It's proof that God is working through you, and therefore it's proof of God. And if there's proof of God, they know they're in trouble. See? So, but I think sometimes it takes them a while. They're like, man, how does he keep, you know, just going? You know, how come nothing I'm doing is really working or sticking or affecting her or bringing her down or making her sick or worse? It's like I did this and I did this and I did that. But no, see, God is in control. That's the message. That's the message, right, to these people. So because they have witnessed God at work in you and through you, this is when, because you may not even realize it, like before they do, which is really interesting, okay? But when they see this in you and it clicks, this is when they might tell themselves, or tell on themselves, or reveal themselves to you, because they have witnessed something beyond their comprehension, okay? And so they're going to react. That's a big deal to them. And you're going to see that reaction. And then you're going to be like, what are you acting like that? Oh, see, and they tell themselves that way. So the word paranoia, you have para, which is beyond, and you have nous, N-O-O-S, I hope I'm saying that right, which means mind. So those are some of the root elements of the word paranoia. Beyond the mind. Beyond the mind. So that word, you know, paranoia has a negative connotation. See, again, like a lot of the evolution of words, when you look them up, look up the history of language, a lot of times they're very, you know, the earliest definitions you can find are the most helpful, the most enlightening and insightful, you know? And so getting to those can really give you a lot of keys, you know, a lot of pieces of the puzzle. But a lot of words have evolved to a negative state. A state of blaming and shaming and judging and labeling, when that was not the initial energy behind them, right? Meaning. But this is how the tables turn. See, you start out experiencing all these bizarre things. I mean, when I say all, I mean all these bizarre things. And you're like, what in the world has happened? You know, I'm a healthy person. I take care of myself. I don't do drugs. You know, I've had a very logical life up until this point, up until I met this person, and now I feel like I'm going crazy. See? So the paranoia, starts with you're like, what in the world's going on? Even though you know it's not you. But it shifts, see. Tables turn because they witness something beyond their own mind, okay? And so when you think about fear, it's kind of like, who's scared now? You know what I mean? God is so good, man. He's so good. So think about this. This was kind of just a little fun tangent I thought of. If we live today like they did, like back in the, you know, times in the Bible, when all that was written, you know, hundreds of years, if our lifespan was that long, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's certain body parts that never stop growing, like our ears and our noses, and, you know, if you just imagine someone that's 200 or 300 years old, what they would look like, what comes to my mind is like an elf or a gnome, right? Like what you see in fairy tales, right? And what's interesting is, you know, we know that the older you get, the more you learn, the more wisdom you have, right? So you would see yourself as just a wise old gnome or elf, you know? But they would see you as a witch or a warlock, right? But again, it's not us. It's God. It's God through us, right? Who is reflecting back to them their true nature, which is rooted in evil, right? The choice to do bad things, evil things, right? So yeah, and the thing is, it's like, you know, even though it's not us, it's God, and sometimes God works through us and we're not really aware of what's going on. Sometimes he does let us in on things too, right? Like our signs. He gives us signs, our dreams that we might have. The intuition's language has a lot of different methods, right? So again, this numinous element of life is easily observed throughout time, across the world and nature. You know, if you look at the animals, at the changing landscape, there's a lot to be witnessed, right? But you do have to have the eyes to see, and you have to want to look. You have to want to look too, you know. It's kind of like these people who are operating in the dark with bad intentions. It's kind of like they don't have the eyes to see until one day they do. And you may be the one, the vessel. It's not like you really get the credit for it. You're just the vessel, right? And when that happens, like I said, it's like their mind is blown. And I can imagine it's probably very terrifying for them. It's probably a very scary experience. It's conviction of the soul, you know, but that creates an opportunity though for them to repent, you know, and change their ways. But if they don't do that, then you're going to see them. See, this right here I'm about to describe is like your proof that they witnessed, they had a brush with God. Okay, they scramble. You're going to see them scramble. They're going to be getting some certificates. They're going to be joining a church. They're going to be joining some church groups. They're going to be doing good in their community. They're going to be just working really hard and fast to get a network of friends. You know, it's kind of like all this is serving to be, they're reconstructing their fig leaves is what they're doing. Or what we would call today their facade. That's what they're doing, which is just more proof, you know. So, but the takeaway for us, realizing that, you know, all this was happening in and through us, the takeaway for us is that we were never alone after all, right? But the irony is that that's their takeaway too. They were never alone. Despite the fig leaves. Doesn't matter, see? That's the cool part of it. That's the sword. It's the same truth. It's good for some of us. It's bad for others. See? So, yeah. But, yeah. So they think they're operating this whole time behind the sheep's clothing, behind the fig leaves, in privacy, okay? Let's look at the word private. From the Online Etymology Dictionary, you have the Latin word privatus, which means set apart. Well, God, though, if you, in the Bible, there's a lot of references where his people, the people that love God, right? His people are the ones that are set apart. Again, you have just more and more confirmation in your life experiences, and just in looking at just a deep dive in some of these definitions, you just have more and more evidence for the fact that they think that they are, you know, operating in private, but God is keeping us held, you know, in private, and all of God's abilities to convict these people, right, is done in a way that is hidden and only flows through you in the right time, in the right moment, in the right way. And that numinosity is what's hidden, right, in you with Christ. It's a joint effort, right? That's what humility does. When I say joint effort, that's what humility does. That's what submission does. But it's not something you have to try to do or to work at. It's a result of the condition of our heart. Okay? Our choice is in free will, is which side will we be on. And it's not about choosing to be good or evil. I don't feel like so much as. It's about choosing a relationship with God, because when you do that, then automatically you're going to be operating on God's side, see. So this automatically turns us into a vessel, which is why you think you may be doing good in the world, but they may be perceiving you as an awful, evil, scary person. It's the sword of God. It's the word, the conviction flowing through you, totally unintentionally sometimes, convicting someone you don't even mean to. So again, you become, through your desire to want that relationship with God, and you cultivate that, right? Then you automatically transform into a vessel. That's the transformation. That, to me, is the real transformation we're after, we're seeking as part of our healing and our learning journey. I'm burning slap up, y'all. I tell you, down here in the South, it's like cold 1 minute, hot 1 minute, cold 1 minute, hot 1 minute. I hope you can hear me. I've got a breeze going now. I've got my windows down. But that's the transformation, see. It's not something you can force or work for. It's a result of our relationship with God, because as we seek that, we become the vessel, right? And the cool thing is, God can use anybody as a vessel at any time, too, you know, even if you're not seeking that relationship. That's his power, you know, so powerful. But it's kind of like, it's honorable and great that so many of us want to be better and do better and learn and grow. That's a good thing, to want to strive for wisdom. But really, more than striving for wisdom, I feel like, is the understanding piece. Like it says, you know, in all you're getting, get understanding. Because when you get that part of it, you'll understand, I feel like, that it's not about striving for transformation. Because the only way to really get it is to be gifted it. It's a gift. It's a gift. So, yes, identifying these experiences for what they are creates the opportunity for a life of gratitude and peace. So, I hope you enjoyed the message today, and I'm going to try really hard to figure out how I can not be so long-winded and just give a short message here and there so that I can bring you stuff more often. And so, again, I hope you enjoyed it. I thank you so much for coming along to hear it, and I hope that you have a beautiful day as always, and I will see you again very soon.